we're going to make a trail running or walking shoe for Skaya. We're going to take 30 minutes and we're going to see where we can get. So the first thing I do, I actually work in Rhino. For me, I've been working in 2D and 3D for over 20 years. I can draw in Rhino faster than I can sketch with my hands now. It's just my tool that I like. The other thing I really like about Rhino is that I can really have a nice sense of the size of everything I'm working in. So I draw one-to-one very strictly. So I make this an exact size 9. I try to draw it exactly right so I'm in proportion. So I drew out a quick silhouette. And to see if I like the silhouette, that's the first thing I use NewArc for. What I do is directly from Rhino, I just grab a screen grab of something this simple. I'll just make a cleaned up version of this and I'll just drag and drop. You can see here the sketch, and I'll render this a few times. I just accept whatever prompt it gives me. I'm just looking for the silhouette. Do I like the throat opening? Do I like what's going on the midsole? Do I think the toe looks right? Because one of the first things people see when they look at footwear is the silhouette itself. So think about like a backlit silhouette. You have to kind of work on making that attractive to your eye and making sure that that's what you kind of want to show before you put any of the lines on it. So I don't worry about anything there. All I'm doing is testing for the outside shape. So I saw these and I decided that the midline, sort of the midsole top line, and the heel itself and the toe, they weren't working very nicely. So I wanted to update that a little bit. So basically, I then pulled this drawing up, I refined a little bit. I gave the midsole a little bit of a kick, gave the heel a little bit of a kick, broadened the toe out a little bit, and then started rendering again to see if I like that. And as I'm scanning this, I'm starting to get ideas that I wouldn't have drawn. I would never draw something like this. It doesn't mean it's bad though. I'm gonna try to fill in for you depending on what your prompt is and depending on what your settings are. So I'll usually put the settings around 2 or 3 for creativity, and then I'll bump it up just to give myself some things as I'm going. Because remember, I'm refining this and I'm looking for ideas because this is a sketchbook for me. I'm not taking them too seriously. I'm not holding very tight to an idea yet. I'm just sketching very loose lines. But you can imagine and you can see this is so much nicer than a sketch. This is like really giving you some things. Oh, this line could be beautiful. What if you split it? Do you like different materials? Do you like sort of jagged edges? But again, none of these I'm keeping very precious yet. I'm just kind of rendering some things out to see what I like and to get a feel. And then what I would do on this one, I refined the midsole top line a little bit more. And I got to a place where I started to like some of these. I even tried a few little lines on the uppers here once I started to render that. So I put some lines in that I had seen in these past renders where there was a few times where there was a couple of pieces here that kind of inspired me a little bit. I think this break here, I started to like the idea of, and I could see the shoe starting to be made in my head. And I was like, okay, this is cool. Let me try some things here. Let me try some lines that, in my mind quickly, this could be a heel underlay. This could be where we split the upper. Maybe we do a reflective piece and a toe overlay. And then this could be kind of like a rand, and this could get us to something for a trail shoe. So let me check. Okay. And then I started to render these and I didn't like this and I didn't like these lines. So then I just refined more. And again, this is within 2 or 3 minutes that I'm able to make these decisions for myself. Because I'm like, okay, I didn't really like that. So let me make this a little cleaner. So I started to re-render these. And again, like I'm looking for just big shapes and I'm looking to see like how things are starting to flow. So I started to like where we were going in some of these renderings. There were some lines that I liked that looked like they were flowing nicely and they were very interesting to me. So then I made a refined drawing again, and now I was pretty happy with the refinement here, but I wanted to start to work with the renderer to get some ideas for a midsole. And I had some ideas, but you know, what I think is very, I don't know, I'll be honest. I don't know if every designer does this. I'll only speak for myself, but you tend to have shapes that you draw over and over. It's habit, it's subconscious. You don't mean to do it, but if you can't break out of that yourself, if you're, especially when you do a lot of design, if you really want to find new lines, one way is you can let someone else draw on your drawings. You can look at inspiration. I love to look at other people's work as inspiration and try to bring something from that, not to copy, but to just be inspired to draw something new or to force your eye to see something different. I would never draw anything like this. That's just not my first style. Maybe it would be there after weeks and weeks of exhausting things, but to just see something like that, I decided not to use it, but it was really inspiring for me. That's one of the ways I work with NewArc, where I just look for things that I think could be really interesting that spark my imagination a little bit. And I think about how I can take that and make it better, how I can take that and work it into a real design. So some of these things were, this one was really cool to me. I was like, wow, that's really neat. I really like some things that are happening here. I like a little bit of this sculpting. And I started to refine my prompts a bit. I think this one I really liked. And I went in and I edited it a bit. So we'll go into edit. I like to sculpt with the tool, and I'll show you what that means. So if we start with original, I I liked everything about this midsole. I like this fold here. I just didn't like what it was doing in here, but okay. So I go through and I use the remove tool as like in my own mind, maybe this sounds silly, but this is a piece of clay that I can work with. And I use the remove tool to highlight areas and remove them. And now that I know how NewArc works, I can sculpt and resculpt the midsole how I want. And I can change the areas just by using remove and the change operation. So I'm resculpting the midsoles a little bit by hand. So I got to this idea and I brought that in as an underlay in Rhino. And because I'm drawing it all the same size, I can bring this in and I can I can kind of sweeten those lines for myself. And then I can see them as a photo and then I can see the lines and I can start to work with the lines. So I put this back in and I started to re-render again. And I started to see, oh, I'm really liking some of these details. When I saw these, I didn't really even ask for this, but the renderer just kind of spit it out. So I was like, ooh, that's nice that you can have these zones. You might be able to color up the midsole a little. So I rendered some more, was able to come back. And what I realized that I didn't like this big piece on the front. It was overpowering things. But I did really like the back. And I decided that I wanted to sweeten up the midsole line a little bit. So I used this line art and I kept the elements that I liked and I started to re-render again. And these felt good. These started to give me some cool pieces. I really like this one. It felt a little plain in the middle. So I started to work on some more renderings. I like this one. I did a little bit of sculpting in here. I didn't really like how it came out. But again, I wasn't keeping anything very precious. This is probably 10 minutes into the process now. I'm already this far in like 10 minutes. How would you ever see these many things or do this many iterations in 10 minutes? So I worked up one of these and I pulled an image in, this one. So I got this image initially and I wanted to edit this. So I did my kind of sculpting trick and stepped through changing the midsole for myself until I got to a place where I liked it. And then I started to apply a pattern on the upper because I didn't really love this mesh. So I blocked this part out with the pattern remove tool and I laid a new pattern in so I could see it myself. And then I colorized it just to see and give myself sort of like a target area to see if I started to like how this felt weight wise. I cleaned a couple of things up, got the midsole to an idea that I liked, dropped this into Rhino, and then started resculpting again. One of the things I like to do is I like to drop the screenshot into experimental to get a taste with almost no materials how the weight of all the elements and all the sculpts will look on the design. So this was actually an experimental with an accepted prompt. I didn't prompt it at all. I just accepted the prompt and I started to see like I'm kind of liking the balance of everything. This line um, felt pretty good with the weight of this line. I was thinking about this as a rand, but I wanted to kind of bring some more juice to this. So I kicked out a couple more renders. And what I decided around here is that I didn't like the way this rand was working. So I redrew again. And I went in and I cleaned up much more. And now it was at a place where I was like, okay, now I really want to get to a real design. Because it was a trail shoe, I like this idea of an overlay to protect from rocks. I wanted to bring some of the outsole up, and I had found some language that I liked, and I liked all the proportions. So now I got the design a little bit cleaner. And now I was looking for a more finished off design that I could work with further. So I went through some of these. We were getting much closer. And again, maybe I was in about 20 minutes at this point. And I think I wasn't doing anything special with prompting. One of the tricks I've used for the bottoms to get some nice sculpting is I'll just use the word futuristic. So I'll use a futuristic running bottom. Another note and a trick that I use is I always render it in black. It gives you nice highs and lows in black. And if you can make it look good in black, it will look good in any color, usually. So I always use black. I try to get it to render all black so then I can work on it from that. It also works very nicely when you drop it into Photoshop. I always type on a white background, even though NewArc kills the background now, which is very nice. It seems to kill it cleaner when it's on white. And when it's a lighter background, I can evaluate it to my eye easier than something like this black here. I think it tends to dull the lights down a little bit too. I might just be intuiting that, but I really like that as my prompting tricks. So as I was going through, I kind of found a couple of things that I like. And another trick that I use, if you find an outsole you like, how do you keep it the same? What I do when I find a midsole I like and an outsole that I like that I want to keep, I download it without the background and I download this file and I just drag it right into Photoshop. And I just keep wherever that lands in the file, that's my 0, 0 point. So I always drag one in there just to make sure it hits and I can drag them on top. And when you download them without a background, it always drops on top of itself. So what I'll do is when I find a midsole that I like, I'll put the midsole in, I'll make a path around it, and then I'll just clip the upper out and I can drop any uppers in behind it and I can have whatever uppers I want on the midsole that I like. You can combine anything you want. So what I did was I worked quickly with the engine and I found an upper that I really liked and a bottom that I really liked. I combined both. And normally, what I'll do for clients or when I'm doing ideation, I'll do a bunch of different ones. I'll do parts and pieces from an outsole. I'll do different uppers. I'll combine them back together. You can do it in the renderer, but it's really use Photoshop for what it's really good for. That literally took 20 seconds to combine this upper and this midsole. And remember where we started. It was really rough, and I didn't even know what I was going to make. But now I have something I really like, and I'm really sort of shaping as I go. So then I was like, okay, I really want to finish this off. I like this concept. Let me put a few things on this to try. So I made a little texture, and that's simple. I just masked the area out that I wanted to texture, brought in some textures from Google, shaped them, clip them. I use the emboss and deboss feature to make it look like it's tucking into the actual midsole. And then I was imagining, okay, if this is the brand that I want to work with, NewArc works really, really amazingly well with logos and words now. So what if we were going to do this shoe, and what if we were going to work with Vibram? Okay, so I tucked a little Vibram logo in there, and then I tucked the scale word mark in there. And now I had something that I really like. One of the other things I wanted to try, and I'll do sometimes I'll do this in NewArc, sometimes I'll do it in Photoshop. I'll mask some areas out and try different materials. So I could try a material on the vamp here. Again, this takes seconds. You just mask the area out, warp it, clip it, and then I can, see if I like a different texture. One of the tricks that I use once I get it here, this is probably good enough for a lot of people. I like to recolor it and I like to get it rendered so it looks even one step more real. So I'll take this and I'll use this and I'll render this. So I'll put the logos on, I'll put some textures on, and this is a trick that I haven't seen a lot of people use. I don't know if people realize that you can render photos. And the coolest part about doing it all black, and again, free tip to everybody that's watching, this is how cool NewArc is. If you put a black lit image in and you just, all I do is I accept the prompt, and this is in experimental mode. So I drop this in experimental mode and I'll do one render and I'll kind of see how this starts to render. If you do a couple of renders in experimental mode, it really starts to see what you're doing and it does beautiful realistic renders. What I like most about it is that it relights everything and it makes it look really beautiful. The coolest thing though is you can change all of the colors with the prompt. So what I'll do is I'll use the prompt and then I'll just go in where it's prompted and I'll just change the prompt itself and I'll just basically recolor it by prompting. And I can see what I can do with the prompt. And now, because NewArc is listening so closely, you can change little things like you can make it have a gradient on the top. You can change the outsole and midsole color, and it does it super accurate. I mean, this is exactly what I wanted. You can change things like the lace keeper and the heel tab just by prompting. And that's what I do. And that's how I explore color. I see if I like the design quickly, and I go through and I look at it. At about this point, I was like, okay, I think I like this design. I had lost the texture, so I re-put the image back in with the texture. I re-rendered that to see if I like the texture. And again, I'm not doing any other tricks, but dropping these in and accepting the prompt that NewArc gives me. So there's no Bryan's secret prompts to get to this. And this was maybe 25 minutes in. So from nothing, I'll remind you where we started. We started here 25 minutes ago. Now we're here. And I'm kind of liking where we're going. So, and again, you know, don't focus too hard on the design of the shoe. It's more about the process. But so I started to get to a space where I was like, okay, let me do a colorway that I like. So I started to dig into these purples. I changed a bunch of things to look at them. And quickly, I'll open all of these up. I started to change the overlays. I wanted to change the outsole color. Um, I got to here. And when I got to here, this was a pretty good rendering, but I wanted to give it a bit more depth and I wanted to just color a few things up. So then I went into the edit tool again. And I think one of the magic parts of NewArc now is how much fine control you have. So basically, the way I color things up is I just do a very quick block with the magnetic lasso tool, use the color button. I'll do it in a second, and then just change the colors real time. I did the eye stay here. I did the little details in the tongue, but say quickly, if we want to color this piece, all I do, and I do this in here as opposed to Photoshop because it's so easy, highlight the area, go to colorize, turn on the preview, and sometimes I'll have a color palette off screen and I'll pick it from the color palette and then just use the brightness to dial it in. That works really well. If I wanted to make this pink like the lace, I could just grab that pink, dial it in by eye. It's not perfect. Remember, this is not a production file. This is a sketch. And now I have something that I could show a client, and at least in 30 minutes, I have a sketch now of something that I can use. And then finally, what I did is I took that into Photoshop and I sweetened that up just a bit too. So I put a little speckle on there. I punched the scale logo up, and then I have the overlay that I can try or not try. And for me, in 30 minutes with any other software, and maybe other people can do this, I could never, there's no, there's no way in the whole world that I could make something like that this easily that I'm driving in 30 minutes. And I'm making all the decisions along the way. I'm bringing that through. This would be a concept. I will show that to the clients as a discussion point and we talk about it. Honestly, for the clients, I might do 20 or 30 or 40 of these for every brief. And then we can tear them all apart. We can see what ideas we like. We can throw the things away we don't. And then we'll do this process again and get to something that's very clean, designed, thought through. We can make so much less waste overall if we do it this way. I can do this and it didn't take me 2 weeks to get to here because if I did, what if I didn't like the design after 2 weeks? This was 30 minutes. I can say, okay, fine. I can put that aside and I can do it again and I can do it again. And each time I do it, I get faster. I've never had a tool like this that empowers my thoughts and that I can get a photo of what I'm thinking real time. I love it for that. And it's been such a force for us. It's changed everything for us. It's really, really, really enabled so much growth and so much product and so much decision making, and it saves so much money and so much time. You can see it's changed everything that I do. So it's just the most amazing tool.